The LA Kings did what they wanted to do on day one of the NHL draft. We'll tell you about the player they selected. Plus, we have part one of our fan feedback show on this edition of Locked On LA Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Kings. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Kings fans, welcome to Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On LA Kings your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. I'm Eddie Garcia, your host of Locked On LA Kings. I've worked in sports media for the past 30 years. Also one of the co-hosts of the Puck Podcast, a weekly NHL review show going into its 19th year, and a passionate LA Kings fan for over 30 years. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Coming up, we have part one of our fan feedback show. We'll also get into what's going on in the mind of Kings fans coming up as far as what we've got going on with the NHL draft and with free agency starting. But we start with the NHL draft here in Los Angeles. I was out at the Peacock Theater for the NHL's first and hopefully last decentralized NHL draft. We'll talk more about that another time. But the LA Kings had the number 24 pick at the start of the day. Question was, would they keep the pick? Would they trade the pick? Or would they trade back and get a second round pick just like they did last season? Well, hopefully lightning strikes twice, because the Kings did almost exactly what they did a year ago. They traded back this year from number 24 to number 31 and pick up a second round pick, the 59th overall selection, which they didn't have a second round pick going into this year's draft. We told you that the Kings would most likely look for a trade with the Flyers, who had multiple first and second round picks. Turns out the Flyers traded two of their three first round picks, numbers 22 and 31 of the Pittsburgh Penguins, for the 12th overall pick. So the Kings would still get that 31st pick, but it wouldn't come from Philadelphia. It would actually come from Pittsburgh. And LA did get that second round pick they wanted. So this is exactly what Kings director of amateur scouting Mark Yannetti said he wanted to do. He did it last year, and it worked out brilliantly. When he traded back, it still got Liam Greentree, and then with the second round pick, he gets Carter George. So hopefully, again, things work out as well this year as they did last year. But let's get into the Kings' first round pick for the 2025 draft. And the player that hopefully we are all getting familiar with here very, very quickly is a defenseman, played for the London Knights last year, and his name is Henry Brzustevicz. 6'1", 195 pounds, a right shot defenseman. And when you look at where he was ranked or projected, as if you're watching on YouTube, we're looking at a list of all the draft analysts that we kind of featured on the show this year, pretty much about where most people thought he would go, in the late 20s, early 30s, generally speaking. So certainly not a reach at all by the LA Kings, and a player that obviously they are projecting to be a very good player for them. Of course, you can say that about everyone, but I think when it comes to Henry Brzustevicz, what you're looking at is a player who comes from a great program and is being groomed, as they do a lot with the London Knights. Again, the details on him: 6'2", 200 pounds, 18-year-old right shot defenseman. So the numbers, I think, are very interesting. The first year he was in juniors with London, he had 2 goals and he had 6 points. His second year with the London Knights, 10 goals, and he had 42 points. So quite the increase from his first season to his second season. He also went from a +7 to a +24. So he was, in his first year with London, he was good in a limited role, and then took a big step with more added responsibility this past year. So don't be surprised if next season he takes another step, because he's now going to go from being, in his first year, one of the kind of depth defenseman. Second year, took on a bigger role. Now, next year, he's expected to be the number one defenseman on this team, or at least the top pairing defenseman on the London Knights, who won the Memorial Cup this past season. If you play for the London Knights, you are well coached, you are well developed. The team is run by a former NHL player in Dale Hunter. So again, this is a player who is kind of being developed in the right way. This is the way that the London Knights do this. They've got plenty of players who have come out of that program to go on to be solid NHL players. And hopefully the LA Kings now have two of them, which is pretty cool because Henry Brzustevicz will be playing on the defense that also features LA Kings prospect Jared Woolley, who was drafted by the Kings from the London Knights last year. So they're teammates together, and I've got to believe they probably were texting each other right after. Actually, I think Jared Woolley was there at the draft. Why not? I mean, he's going to be here for development camp anyway on Monday, so he's already here to support him, his teammate. And they've got to be so excited that come Monday, they'll both have Kings jerseys on, taking part in Kings development camp together. So I did think the Kings would go for a defenseman. They are lacking a bit on the back end as far as depth in the organization. And to be clear, Henry Brzustevicz is still 3 or 4 years away from being an NHL player. So this is not a guy who's going to come in anytime soon, most likely. But I like the pick now. I think we're all going to like the pick even more come next season. Checking the reaction on the pick and what is being said about Henry Brzustevicz. Corey Pronman of The Athletic gave the LA Kings a B+ for this pick. He said, quote, Brzustevicz kept improving as the season went along. He is a tall, mobile right shot who can make a steady first pass and plays with an edge. He's not the sexiest pick, but he checks a lot of boxes for the NHL. And at 31, you'll take that. Being able to trade back and get more assets is solid work by the Kings too. End quote. That was Corey Pronman from The Athletic. Chris Peters of Flow Hockey said about Brzustevicz, quote, he projects as a steady, mobile transition defender with the potential to grow into a number 4 or number 5 NHL blue liner, right shot with a strong defensive foundation. He maintains good gap control, moves the puck very well, and supports play while remaining positionally sound. If he continues to develop his confidence and play driving ability, Brzustevicz could evolve into a reliable second pairing defender. Rachel Dory of ESPN said, as the season progressed, Brzustevicz showed offensive instincts with his puck movement and rush activation. There is significant room for offensive growth, and he should be London's premier defenseman next season. The right shot blue liner has good puck moving and skating ability, who should comfortably fit on the second pair down the road. Jason Bacala from Sportsnet said, Brzustevicz was part of the Memorial Cup champion London Knights and played a significant role for the team. He quietly produced 10 goals and 32 assists in the regular season and followed it up with some secondary scoring in the playoffs with a goal and 4 assists. He has a skill set to be used in a variety of roles, and he's trustworthy defensively. He engages his opponents and doesn't cut corners, searching for offense. I like his size, strength, detail, and compete overall. NHL projection, second pairing, even strength and penalty kill with secondary offense. And finally, Craig Button of TSN said about Brzustevicz, quote, smart puck-moving defenseman who knows where the puck needs to go to ensure advantages are created for his team, plays with a steady and even approach and can handle the challenges, a solid player who will alleviate problems, not contribute to them, end quote. He projects him as a second pairing two-way defenseman, said he is comparable to the NHL's Brett Pesce. As I said, I like the pick now. I think we're all going to like it even more after next season. This is a guy who's being groomed. He's growing. He is being developed the right way by a program and a team that does this very well in the London Knights. So excited about Henry Brzustevicz. Looking forward to seeing him at development camp and seeing his career continue to develop. It was interesting, though, that I did think that there were two players that a lot of draft analysts thought the Kings would take at number 24, and they're both still available. Several early mock drafts had the Kings taking forward Malcolm Spence. He was not taken on day one. And then there were several later mock drafts. We talked about him in our previous show that had the Kings taking defenseman Blake Fiddler. He's still available as well. So interesting that those two players are still available on day number 2 and beyond. All right, up next, that was a look at Henry Brzustevicz and the LA Kings first round pick in the 2025 draft. Up next, we're going to get into part 1 of our fan feedback show here on Locked On LA Kings, your team every day. Have you ever decided at the last minute to head to the ballpark with friends or family? Maybe it's game day and you suddenly realized you want to be in the stands. That's exactly where Gametime comes in. It's the easiest way to grab last minute tickets without the stress. With the money you save on tickets, you can splurge on food, drinks, merch, and even invite a bigger group to come with you. Gametime makes it possible. Gametime makes buying tickets fast and simple. Prices on the app actually drop the closer you get to first pitch, and we've got incredible last minute deals, clear seat views, and the lowest price guarantee that takes the worry out of buying. Gametime is the official ticketing partner of Locked On Major League Baseball, making it easy to browse the app for an exciting upcoming baseball game for the Dodgers or the Angels. Gametime has last-minute tickets and zone deals for big savings, like 10% off exclusive zone deals for FIFA Club World Cup matchups. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right, it's time to get to part 1 of our fan feedback show. Part 2 will be in our next show when we also recap the second day of the NHL draft. But we'll begin with Mario in Arizona. And he says, I watched the Ken Holland press conference, and to be honest, he left me in doubt about the team improving. Sounds to me like they are coming back with the same team. I thought that they brought Holland in to get the team over the hump. Right now, I am not too happy with Gavrikov. I know he wants the best deal, but the Kings have offered him 3 offers. Each time extending the offer still has declined. By this time, I would have moved on. He's just holding up the team from making any moves. Holland also said that change takes time, but I thought he was brought in to make change now since he's only here for a short time. He also said that they have till next Tuesday to make changes. I just hope that the players that they would like to trade for will not have been traded. Just read the Kings are out on the Marner running, or out of the Marner running. What does that mean? Maybe they have a deal for a free agent or for Gavrikov, but I keep seeing that Gabby is going to the Rangers. If so, I'm still hoping for Keandre Miller. What's your opinion on them going after Allen? Do they need him as a backup goalie? Go Kings, go. And that was Dario in Arizona, who sent all that in 3 different emails. So I had to kind of combine them together, but I appreciate that's fine. You could send as many emails as you want. And we'll make it work. I have not heard or read anything about the LA Kings being out of the Mitch Marner sweepstakes, so I don't know where you heard or read that from. I have heard the rumors about Gavrikov and the New York Rangers. As far as being upset with Gavrikov, I'm not. I'd love for him to re-sign with the Kings, but I also can look at this from both sides of it, and he's earned the right to be a free agent. He's earned the right to see what he's worth in the open market. If I were in his shoes, I would do the exact same thing. So it's kind of hard to be upset at him for, it's just the reality of it. If he does end up walking and we lose him for nothing, that obviously sucks. But things change. It looked like he was going to resign when Rob Blake was still here. And I don't know what changed between now and then. Maybe he just changed his mind. Maybe he did change agents. So maybe he was talked into, looking to see what's out there. And like I said, if I were him, I'd do the exact same thing. So I'm not upset with Gavrikov. If you want to be, you can. I'm not going to tell you can't. So I don't know. I don't know if the new GM plays a part in this at all. But I don't think so, because as Ken Holland said, if he was being honest, Rob Blake made an offer to Gavrikov, and Holland has extended that offer. I believe he said twice. So we'll see. I do think that the Kings will have to make a decision pretty quickly if Gavrikov doesn't resign on Tuesday. And I think, Ken Holland said sometimes these things go until the last second. So they're willing to wait until the last second before they try and move on. Frank in Ranchos Palos Verdes checks in. He says, I am still on an epic high after seeing the Oilers get taken down in the finals again. There is absolutely nothing wrong with taking pleasure in the defeat of the arrogant Oilers, the only team in all of sports that I absolutely can't stand. I've had Edmonton derangement syndrome for like 40 years now, and I'm not looking for a cure either. That being said, job one for the Kings is re-signing Gavrikov to Kuzmenko. They are key members of the team, and I'd hate to have the Kings playing catch-up in the offseason if they were to leave. I'll say it again, there is no way Marner is the answer. Let Las Vegas have him for $15 million for a cap hit. The Kings need to make some smaller trades like the Kraken and Flyers just pulled off. Both transactions were absolute steals on their part. I believe some tweaking of the lineup is the way to go. Not any crazy major moves. Your thoughts on this? Go Kings, go. And that was Frank in Ranchos Palos Verdes. I've said all along, if I had my choice of how the Kings could proceed, and obviously it's not completely in their hands, but I would like them to bring Gavrikov back. And then my big offseason move would be to go after Brock Besser, or another right shot right forward that could fill the void and upgrade that area. And if all else fails, I think you can fall back potentially on Kuzmenko. But you talked about the trades by Seattle and Philadelphia. I'm guessing you're talking about the Mason Marchment trade, and I was a fan of that one too. I'm not a big fan of Trevor Zegras. Maybe that's my Ducks derangement syndrome, but I did think that was a good deal by the Flyers to get a 24-year-old who does have a lot of talent, and maybe he, in a new place, kind of gets his career together. I don't know about him in that market though. But anyway, unfortunately, it does feel like the Kings are, being forced to sit and wait on Gavrikov before they move on other things potentially. But like I said, if he ends up signing at the last second, then we'll all look back on it and not care at all. This comes from Orlando in LA, and he says, I am a longtime fan, not going to start stick measuring of how big of a fan I am, who's avoided commenting anywhere. But after the Burnside, who works for the Kings, hoorah, blowing sunshine up everyone's I've had it. This organization has no accountability, zero, from Luke sitting out there by himself for an interview and shrugging his shoulders and saying about Jim Hiller, we all make mistakes. This ownership just allowed their two-position executives to lead us to 4 straight years of losing to the same opponent. What serious hockey organization in a large market lets that happen? This ownership doesn't buy out bad decisions. They just write out the contracts they have. Regardless of the situation of the team, it still feels as though we get talked to as LA fans who still don't really understand hockey. How long does it take to build a culture? Years, right? How about 4 years? Because that is exactly what we have now, a losing culture. But it must be great out in the South Bay, the land of zero accountability. The Holland hiring is a friend move, bottom line. A big thank you from Luke for allowing him to win the cup. When your first statement in your presser is, my grandkids are so excited about going to Disneyland, then following that up with a desire to win the cup doesn't show me much. I get visions of Pierre-Luc Dubois. His family was stoked to be out in LA. I hope he proves me wrong. And now the Panthers just showed how good you have to be to win the cup. Where are we on that scale? Not even close. And that was from Orlando in LA. I definitely did not expect that kind of reaction from the Scott Burnside interview. I get what you're saying about losing 4 years in a row in the playoffs, and I agree that's not acceptable. But the GM lost his job because of that, so it's not like there's no accountability there. And I'm as disappointed in the playoff results as anyone, but I have a hard time saying that a team that makes the playoffs 4 years in a row has a losing culture. That's a little bit of a stretch for me. As far as the accountability, there is not the same amount of pressure for the LA Kings to win as there is in this town for the Lakers and the Dodgers. I think a lot of it is media pressure, and they just don't have that same kind of media presence where they're getting talked about a lot on sports talk radio and in the local news and those kind of things. It's just the reality of it. And I don't know that it's ever going to change as far as that goes. I think really the only accountability the Kings have, obviously, is to themselves. And ownership isn't going to make changes as long as the team is turning a profit and as long as they're selling tickets. So the only way that changes, as far as the accountability, if you're talking about getting rid of Luc Robitaille, is, again, obviously losing counts, but it would have to get pretty bad, and people would have to stop showing up, I think, for the ownership to really do some kind of a house cleaning or something along those lines. As for the Ken Holland hiring, we'll see if it works out or not. I think there are legitimate reasons why you want to bring in a guy who's literally in the Hall of Fame now to see and has been around the league for almost 30 years as a general manager. So it's not like he's just some guy off the street. I really don't agree that Luc Robitaille only hired Ken Holland because Ken Holland brought him to Detroit where he won a Stanley Cup. I don't think this is any kind of payback for that. I don't buy that. I do agree when you say look at the Florida Panthers and compare them to the LA Kings. I know I watched the Stanley Cup final and I thought, man, we don't look anything like that team. But then again, no one else in the league looks like that team either. There's only one Florida Panthers. So to be fair, there's a lot of teams wishing they look like that team and don't look like that team right now. We've got more emails coming up. We will get to that next here on Locked On LA Kings, your team every day. You ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track, and that's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It is a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So you don't just stop managing your money, you start building wealth. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com, and you will get 50% off your first year. That is monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNHL, for half off your first year. All right, let's get right back to your emails. This is from Dan. He's in parts unknown, and he says, I'm an everyday listener of Locked On Kings and an every week listener of the Puck podcast. Wow, you are a special man, Dan. He says, I met you last year before Kings game at Bowling Alley at LA Live. I like what you do, and I'm always interested in connecting with you and other Kings fans. Would love to meet at a sports bar and watch a game with a bunch of Locked On Kings listeners. Dan also had some other questions that I will answer privately in an email to you, Dan. But good to hear from you. Definitely remember meeting up at Lucky Strike. And I would definitely be up for doing something like that again. The issue with something like that, having like a meetup with a bunch of fans, is figuring out a location where everyone can go. Certainly like a place that's convenient, a lot of parking, all that kind of stuff. I've been a part of different kind of get-togethers like this with other things. But it's definitely something to think about. Probably, I'm thinking like maybe an away game on the weekend, something like that would probably be pretty cool. I'm all up for doing it. I would love to do it. Dan, I love meeting other Kings fans just like you do, and would love to do that. So, and I'm even toying around with the idea of like some online virtual watch parties as well. So definitely something to look forward to for next season. Alan in Sonoma says, I've seen a few NHL talking heads mention that Jordan Kyrou is on the trade block. Do you think he would be a good fit for the Kings? Go Kings, go. Thanks. And that was from Alan in Sonoma. Yeah, Jordan Kyrou is a player that I have not talked about as a potential trade target for the Kings. And I have heard that he could be available like you. I have not heard, though, that the Kings could be a team of interest, although it would seem like he would be a great fit here. Right shot, right forward. Talented offensively, 36 goals, 70 points last year. He's been a 30-goal scorer and a 70-point producer each of the last 3 seasons, just about. The issue is his contract, and he's got 6 more years on it at $8.125 million. He's got a no movement clause that kicks in on July 1st. So the Blues are thinking, do we want to spend that kind of money for 6 more years? Maybe we can use that money elsewhere. He's a good player, but he kind of hasn't been a difference maker for the Blues to this point. And once that no trade clause kicks in, then they're stuck with him unless he demands out. So that's why he is on the market. But, obviously it would depend on what the Kings would have to give up to get him. But I think Jordan Kyrou is a pretty talented player. I think he fits a need for the Kings. So I would be interested in seeing what the Kings would have to give up to get him. But I would be interested. I would make that phone call if I was Ken Holland. Scott in Simi Valley checks in. He says, it was a good pre-draft press conference for Ken Holland. Holland has a knack for answering reporters' questions in an informative and interesting way without giving out too much information or stepping on players' toes. He's respectful and professional, and I like his style. Enjoyed your Kings Hall of Fame list and the honorable mentions as well. If Brownie is mentioned, then I'd like to mention the Kings lifer who drafted him, Dave Taylor. Dave came into the league in 1977 as a scrawny, 165-pound kid with a terrible stuttering problem and developed into one of the most consistent and hardworking wingers I have ever seen. Dave Taylor played 1,111 games, all with the Kings, scored 431 goals with 338 assists, nearly a point per game player, while racking up twice as many penalty minutes as Brownie. He also finished his career as a plus 186 for some mediocre Kings teams much of the time. Being a member of the famous Triple Crown line didn't hurt those numbers, but Taylor earned every point. If we look at one player who most personifies Kings hockey, sure, you're going to look at Kopitar and Brown, but simply cannot forget what a pleasure and a thrill it was to watch Dave Taylor all those years. Rogie Vachon's a Hall of Famer, I think rightfully so, but Taylor was more consistently excellent at his position for a longer time. Taylor has no cups on his resume, so I don't see him getting into the Hall of Fame, but anyone who cares to look at his career can make a strong Hall of Fame argument for number 18. Thanks, Eddie, and good luck to Marky and Eddie and his staff this weekend. And that was Scott in Simi Valley. That's a good call, Scott. I should have mentioned Dave Taylor. Just looking at his numbers comparatively, they're pretty favorable to a guy who just got elected to the Hall of Fame. Alexander Mogilny had 42 career more goals than Dave Taylor. Taylor, though, had more points than Mogilny, 1,069 to 1,032. Taylor did play in 121 more games than Mogilny. Mogilny was certainly flashier, more accomplished internationally, but I think there's an argument to be made for Dave Taylor. I think he's kind of like Dustin Brown. I don't think he's got quite enough to get in, but I think there is an argument to be made, and I do think that was a good job on you to bring up Dave Taylor. Travis in Tucson says, I hope summer is treating you well. I know I've been banging the drum about Mitch Marner since before the playoffs, and I still think he should be priority number one for the Kings in free agency. We need a game breaker, and if he does end up going to Vegas, gross, or anywhere, maybe give Dallas a call about Jason Robertson to bring the young man home is plan B. At this point, I've given up on Gavrikov returning, which might actually not be a bad thing. They say he wants to go to the Rangers. The Kings could do a trade package with K'Andre Miller and parts for Gavrikov's rights and extension in place. You could potentially re-sign LaFerriere, extend Miller, and bring back Kuzmenko for around $12 to $13 million. This would still leave you enough cap space to go after Marner or make a trade for an impact winger. This type of move wouldn't take a big hit on defense, but the offense could become dynamic. Something to consider. Go Kings, go. Travis in Tucson. Well, K'Andre Miller made just under $4 million per season in his last contract. I think LaFerriere gets a bridge deal around $3 million, and then Kuzmenko made $5.5 million last season. So I think your number of 12 to 13 is about right for those three guys. But that would leave the Kings about $8 million to spend, and that's not going to be enough to get Mitch Marner, I don't think. Be shocked if it was, actually. So maybe a Brock Besser for around $8 million, but then you also need to sign a backup goalie. And even if you sign David Rittich, that's still going to be $1 million. So I think in that scenario, I think you would probably have to let Kuzmenko walk. If you get K'Andre Miller and give LaFerriere the deal, and you want to go out and add somebody like a Brock Besser, then I think you could do that, but I don't think you could sign all those guys and still look to upgrade. I mean, Jason Robertson, we talked about him. Certainly worth exploring. Would be interesting to see what Dallas is looking for in return in that kind of a trade. Thank you to everyone who took the time to email. I have said it every week. It's true. So I will keep saying it, but the show is literally not possible without your participation. And that was part 1 of the fan feedback show. If you sent in an email and I didn't read it, that's because we're going to save it for tomorrow's show, when we will also be recapping day 2 of the NHL draft for the LA Kings. If you would like to get an email, you can still get in an email for the part 2 of the feedback show. Always leave some extra room for a few emails if you want to comment on the Kings first round pick for sure. The email address is lockedoneddie@gmail.com, EDDIE. And you can always leave your comments if you're watching on YouTube in the comments section. If you're interested in some extra Kings content, email me at lakingsextra@gmail.com for the details. And we'd love you to stay interactive with the show on social media, X, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. We are at Locked On LA Kings. I'm Eddie Garcia. Thank you as always for listening and watching Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Have a great rest of your day. We will talk to you next time. And as always, go Kings, go.